I stood at the edge of my backyard, watching as Lisa and her band of self-important HOA enforcers stood frozen in horror. The water in my once pristine pool churned violently, the flickering of hundreds, no, thousands of razor-sharp teeth glinting beneath the surface. The HOA members, just moments ago prepared to enjoy their self-declared community pool, now shrieked and stumbled backward, their entitled confidence evaporating in an instant. I let a slow smile spread across my face. How did we get here? How did a quiet suburban man like me end up unleashing absolute chaos on the most power-hungry HOA president the world had ever seen? Well, it all started the day Lisa decided my pool was no longer mine. I moved into this neighborhood thinking I had found my own slice of paradise. The house was perfect, the backyard spacious, and most importantly, I had my dream pool, a deep, sparkling oasis custom-built to my preferences. It was my retreat from the world, the one place I could escape to after long, stressful workdays. I had no issues with anyone, at least not until Lisa decided I wasn't playing by her rules. Lisa was the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, a middle-aged woman with an iron grip on the neighborhood. Every street light, every blade of grass, and every mailbox was under her watchful eye, and she relished the power. I had seen her terrorizing other homeowners before, fining them for minor infractions, forcing them to repaint their doors, even dictating how many plants they could have in their front yards. But I had never thought she would come for me. I was wrong. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a letter, a plain white envelope stamped with the HOA's official seal, dropped into my mailbox like a harbinger of doom. I tore it open and scanned the words, my brow furrowing deeper with each line. According to the letter, my backyard pool was now being considered a shared neighborhood amenity. I was expected to open it up to the entire community, with scheduled swim hours and an HOA-appointed maintenance committee. My jaw tightened as I read the final line. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines and potential legal action. I stormed over to the HOA office the next morning, the letter crumpled in my fist. Lisa sat behind a polished desk, an infuriatingly smug expression plastered on her face. She barely looked up when I entered, her fingers tapping lazily on the keyboard. "Ah, Mr. Evans," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I assume you've read the notice." I slammed the paper onto her desk. "You can't just take my pool," I said, my voice steady but firm. "That's my private property." Lisa sighed dramatically, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "Oh, David, it's not about taking anything. It's about community. The HOA has decided that your pool is a valuable resource for all homeowners. It wouldn't be fair for you to keep it to yourself." I stared at her, disbelief creeping into my voice. "Wouldn't be fair? I paid for that pool. I maintain it. I pay the water bill. How is it fair that my neighbors get to use it for free?" She tilted her head and smiled in a way that made my blood boil. "Well, that's just how things work in a planned community. You wouldn't want to be the only one refusing to contribute, would you?" Her voice carried the unmistakable weight of a threat. I left the office fuming, but I wasn't about to roll over and let Lisa have her way. Over the next week, I reinforced my fence, added security cameras, and even put up a few no trespassing signs. But Lisa wasn't done. Oh no, she had barely begun. It started small, neighbors accidentally wandering into my yard, kids suddenly climbing my fence to cool off in the water. Every time I confronted them, I got the same excuse. Lisa said it was okay. Then came the fines. Letters began arriving almost daily, each listing absurd violations: failure to cooperate with community regulations, unapproved fence modifications, obstructing neighborhood harmony. The fines stacked up into the thousands, and when I refused to pay, Lisa escalated. One evening, I came home to find a group of strangers lounging by my pool, their towels and floats scattered around like they owned the place. A full-blown pool party was in progress. A neighbor I barely knew was grilling hot dogs. Kids were shrieking as they cannonballed into the deep end, and Lisa? She sat in a pool chair, sunglasses on, sipping a margarita like she was on vacation. I clenched my fists and marched toward her. "Get out. Now." She lowered her sunglasses just enough to look at me. "Oh, relax, David. It's just a little gathering. This is my property," I snapped. "You're trespassing." She took a slow sip of her drink. "Not according to the HOA. As of last night, the board officially voted to integrate your pool into the community. It's no longer private property." I felt my blood turn to ice. "You can't do that." She gave me that sickeningly sweet smile again. "Oh, but we already did. The rage that bubbled up inside me in that moment was unlike anything I had ever felt. I knew right then and there that this wasn't just about my pool anymore. This was about principle. This was about standing up against unchecked power, against the arrogance of someone who believed they could take whatever they wanted without consequence. And so, standing there, surrounded by entitled neighbors treating my hard-earned property like a public park, I made a decision. Lisa wanted to claim my pool. Fine, she could have it, but she wouldn't like what came next. As I walked back into my house, I pulled out my phone and began searching for something that would make this situation unforgettable. I scrolled past prank ideas, security upgrades, even legal threats, but nothing felt quite right. And then I stumbled upon something so outrageous, so insane, that I actually started laughing. Piranhas. I clicked on a video showing schools of them slicing through the water like living razors. Their reputation was legendary, fearsome, terrifying. And suddenly, I had a plan that would make Lisa and her HOA cronies regret the day they ever crossed me. I sat in my living room that night, staring at my laptop screen, the glow illuminating my face as I scrolled through websites about piranhas. I had read about them before, but now I was researching with a purpose. Everything about them fascinated me. Their speed, their sharp teeth, their reputation as ferocious predators. Of course, I knew the truth. Piranhas weren't actually the bloodthirsty monsters Hollywood made them out to be. They were opportunistic feeders, not mindless killers. But that didn't matter. What mattered was their terrifying image. That was the key to my plan. The HOA had pushed me too far, and now it was time to push back in a way they would never forget. The more I read, the more my plan took shape. I didn't want to actually hurt anyone. I wasn't a psychopath. I just needed to scare the HOA so badly that they would never dare to lay claim to my pool again. The goal was simple: create an illusion of absolute terror. If I could make them believe the water was crawling with deadly creatures, they'd run screaming, and my pool would be left alone forever. The biggest challenge, of course, was actually acquiring the piranhas. They weren't exactly something you could pick up at a pet store. I dug deeper, searching for exotic fish suppliers, black market pet dealers, anyone who might be able to get me what I needed. After several hours of research, I found a lead, a sketchy-looking website specializing in rare and unique aquatic pets. Among their listings was exactly what I was looking for: red-bellied piranhas. They were expensive, but at this point, I didn't care. If this worked, it would be worth every penny. The next morning, I made the call. The man on the other end of the line spoke with a thick accent, his voice gruff and to the point. "You want how many?" he asked after I told him what I was looking for. I hesitated for a second, then doubled down. 10,000. There was a long pause. Then he let out a short laugh. "You're either insane, or you have a very big problem." "Maybe both," I admitted. "Can you get them, or not?" Another pause. Then he said, "It'll cost you." "I don't care." He named a price that made my stomach twist, but I agreed without hesitation. "Give me a week," he said, "and no refunds." I hung up and exhaled slowly. The wheels were in motion. Now I just had to prepare for their arrival. Over the next few days, I made sure everything was set up perfectly. I added a few subtle changes to the pool to make it look more ominous, darkening the water slightly with safe, non-toxic dye, placing underwater lights that would cast eerie shadows, and even adding a few fake piranhas just for good measure. I wanted it to look terrifying before anyone even got close. Then came the security upgrades. I knew that once I unleashed my plan, the HOA would be furious. They'd throw every legal argument they could at me. I needed to cover my tracks. I installed new cameras to capture every second of what was about to happen. I documented every instance of HOA trespassing leading up to this moment, making sure I had undeniable proof that they had repeatedly violated my rights as a homeowner. This wasn't just about getting revenge. It was about winning the war. A few days later, I received the call. "Your fish are ready," the voice on the other end said. "Delivery tomorrow. Be home." I barely slept that night. My mind raced with anticipation, excitement, and just a hint of fear. What if this went too far? What if someone actually got hurt? But I pushed those doubts aside. I knew what I was doing. The piranhas weren't dangerous unless someone did something stupid, and besides, I had no intention of letting anyone actually get in the water. The next morning, a large unmarked van pulled up to my house. The driver, a gruff-looking man with a shaved head and a permanent scowl, stepped out and opened the back. Inside were dozens of large, sealed containers, each filled with water and, more importantly, thousands of small, glinting bodies. My heart pounded as I watched the fish move in synchronized chaos, their sleek forms cutting through the water like tiny torpedoes. The man handed me a clipboard. Sign. I scribbled my name, and with that, the deal was done. He and his crew worked quickly, transporting the containers into my backyard. I had already prepared everything: the perfect water temperature, the right balance of oxygenation, everything necessary to keep them alive. As they were released into the pool, I watched in awe as they spread out, darting through the water like a shimmering red wave. It was beautiful and terrifying. Now all I had to do was wait. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. That very afternoon, Lisa and her loyal HOA members sent out a mass email announcing an official community pool day. They had scheduled it for the weekend, encouraging everyone in the neighborhood to bring their kids, their pool toys, their picnic baskets. The entitlement was unreal. They truly believed my pool belonged to them. I almost felt bad for what was about to happen. Almost. The day of the event arrived, and I made no effort to stop them. If anything, I made my pool look even more inviting. The gates were open, the water was calm, and I had even set out a few lounge chairs. I watched from my porch as people streamed into my backyard like they owned the place. Lisa, as usual, led the charge, her nose high in the air, her sunglasses reflecting the afternoon sun. "See, everyone," she announced loudly. "This is what community is all about. Sharing." I barely concealed my grin. The first group of kids ran toward the pool. I saw their parents chatting, distracted, oblivious to the danger lurking beneath the surface. My pulse quickened. Just as the first child reached the edge and prepared to jump, it happened. A single piranha broke the surface, its sleek body glinting in the sunlight before vanishing back into the depths. The reaction was immediate. A woman screamed, "Oh my God, what was that?" Then another flash of movement, another fin slicing through the water. A man stumbled backward. "Holy, are those piranhas?" Panic spread like wildfire. People scrambled away from the pool, knocking over chairs and drinks, shoving each other in their desperation to get as far away as possible. Lisa, however, remained rooted in place, her face frozen in shock. Then she turned to me, her voice shaking with rage. "What the hell did you do?" I shrugged, barely suppressing my laughter. "Oh, you didn't hear? The pool is officially community property now. I just thought I'd make it more interesting." Her face turned a shade of red I didn't think was possible. "You can't do this. This is illegal. This is dangerous." I crossed my arms, watching as the last of the terrified crowd fled from my yard. "Oh, now you're worried about safety? Funny, you didn't seem to care when you were trespassing on my property." She opened her mouth, then closed it again, realizing she had no argument. She had been caught, and she knew it. The pool was mine again, and this time, no one would dare claim otherwise. The screams that erupted from my backyard were unlike anything I had ever heard before. Pure panic, absolute chaos. Grown adults tripped over each other, knocking over chairs and tables in their mad rush to escape. Parents grabbed their children, some yanking them so hard that their pool toys were left behind, floating aimlessly in the water. The HOA's grand pool party had transformed into an absolute nightmare, and I stood there, arms crossed, watching the beautiful disaster unfold. Lisa was the last one to react. Unlike the others who had bolted the moment they spotted the sleek bodies gliding just beneath the surface, she stood frozen, her face a mask of disbelief. I could almost see the gears turning in her head as she tried to process what was happening. She wanted to deny it, to dismiss it as some kind of prank, but the evidence was right in front of her. The pool, the one she had so smugly declared as community property, was now a living nightmare. She turned her wide, furious eyes toward me. "What the hell did you do?" Her voice was a sharp contrast to the terrified murmurs around her. I shrugged, barely containing my amusement. "Nothing much. Just made a few additions." Her lips twisted in fury. "You put piranhas in the pool?" I let the question hang in the air for a moment before replying. "Well, technically, I introduced a highly misunderstood species of South American fish into a completely legal, privately owned body of water. But if you want to call them piranhas, I won't argue." Her fists clenched at her sides, and for a second, I thought she might actually lunge at me. Instead, she turned and barked orders at the remaining HOA members who were still too stunned to move. "Get animal control. Get the police. He can't do this. He can't get away with this." I let out a small chuckle, shaking my head. "Oh, Lisa, I think you'll find that I can." She spun back to me, her face now a deep shade of red. "This is a violation of HOA regulations. This is a safety hazard. You're endangering the community." I raised an eyebrow, tilting my head slightly. "Community? Oh, I see. You mean the same community that broke into my backyard? The same community that's been using my pool without permission? The same community that ignored every single one of my complaints when I told them to stay out. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice just enough to make sure only she could hear me. You took my property, Lisa. You stole from me. And now you're mad because I decided to make it unappealing. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She knew I was right. She knew that if she admitted what had really happened, she would be the one in trouble. Her only hope now was to spin the situation in her favor. But I wasn't done yet. One of the HOA board members, a nervous-looking man with sweat already pooling at his collar, hesitantly spoke up. "Why, you'll have to remove them," he stammered. "The pool is still considered a shared community resource under HOA guidelines." I grinned. "Oh, is it?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, because I happen to have a few things that say otherwise. With a tap of my screen, I brought up the security footage I had saved. Crystal clear video evidence of Lisa and her cronies repeatedly trespassing on my property, footage of strangers climbing over my fence, neighbors throwing unauthorized parties, and most importantly, the official HOA meeting where they had smugly declared my pool as their own without my consent. The color drained from Lisa's face as the footage played. The surrounding crowd, now more curious than afraid, leaned in to watch. Some of them hadn't realized just how far the HOA had gone. The murmurs began, the disapproving whispers, the shifting of alliances. I turned my gaze back to Lisa, watching as she desperately searched for a way out. "You see, Lisa, I didn't just dump a bunch of fish into a pool for fun. I did it because you forced my hand. You tried to take something that wasn't yours, and when I fought back, you doubled down. You bullied, you trespassed, you manipulated. And now? Now you've lost." I turned to the growing crowd. "And if anyone here wants to take me to court over this, I'd be happy to have a judge look at these videos." Silence stretched between us. Lisa's face twitched, her lips pressing into a thin, furious line. She knew there was no way to fight this, not publicly, not with this many witnesses. One of the parents, still holding their child's arm tightly, cleared their throat. "So, are the fish actually dangerous?" I smiled. "Not really. They are mostly harmless unless provoked. But, perception is everything." A few people laughed nervously, realizing the real game I had played. The HOA had terrorized this neighborhood for years, using fear and intimidation to get their way. Now, for the first time, they were the ones afraid. And the best part? I hadn't broken a single law. Lisa turned on her heel and stormed toward the exit, pushing past people as she went. The remaining HOA members exchanged uncertain glances before scrambling after her. The moment they were gone, the tension in the air dissipated. Neighbors who had once been too afraid to stand up to Lisa were now grinning, whispering to each other, throwing me approving nods. I took a deep breath and looked at my pool, now abandoned, still shimmering under the afternoon sun. The Piranhas, my little insurance policy, darted through the water, blissfully unaware of the havoc they had just caused. Then my phone buzzed. A notification popped up, an upload completion alert. I smirked. While the HOA had been busy panicking, I had been busy uploading the entire fiasco to the internet. The footage was already spreading. Within minutes, the video would be making rounds on social media, gaining traction, turning Lisa's power trip into nothing more than a viral joke. I sat down on one of the overturned chairs and let out a satisfied sigh. The war wasn't over yet. I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight. But for now, I had won the battle. And as I watched the last of the HOA members scurry away like frightened mice, I knew one thing for sure. They would never, ever step foot in my backyard again. The fallout was immediate and glorious. By the time the sun had set, the video of Lisa and her HOA minions fleeing my pool had already started making waves on social media. It started with a few shares, some comments mocking the audacity of an HOA trying to claim someone's private property, and within hours, it had escalated into a full-blown internet sensation. Thousands of comments poured in, people laughing at the sheer entitlement, others enraged on my behalf, and some simply enjoying the sheer chaos of it all. Memes started popping up, some showing Lisa's horrified face as she realized the pool was filled with piranhas, others captioned with phrases like, "When you try to steal a man's pool, but forget he has a villain arc." I woke up the next morning to dozens of notifications. News articles had already started covering the story. Some called it the ultimate HOA revenge, others referred to me as a genius, and one even went as far as to call me a modern-day folk hero. It was surreal but also incredibly satisfying. Lisa had spent years bullying people under the guise of community rules, and now she was the one being publicly humiliated. The HOA had thrived on fear and control, but they had never faced anyone willing to push back as hard as I had. Now the entire country was laughing at them. Predictably, Lisa didn't take it well. By noon, I had received an official-looking letter taped to my door. The HOA was demanding that I immediately remove the hazardous creatures from my pool and pay a fine for creating a dangerous environment within the neighborhood. I read the letter twice, laughed, and then calmly recorded myself tearing it in half before tossing it in the trash. They had no legal ground to stand on, and they knew it. This was nothing more than a desperate attempt to regain control. That afternoon, I received another visit, this time from a police officer. He looked tired, like he had better things to do, and I couldn't blame him. He introduced himself, explained that the HOA had filed a complaint, and asked if I was actually keeping piranhas in my pool. I nodded and invited him to take a look. He peered over the edge, watching as the fish glided silently beneath the water, their sharp teeth barely visible. He whistled under his breath and shook his head. "Well," he said, turning back to me, "they are not illegal. You own the property, you didn't put them in a public space, and from what I can tell, you didn't actually break any laws." I grinned. "Exactly," he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, between you and me, I think it's hilarious. But I have to file a report, so I'm going to have to ask, are the fish actually dangerous?" I shook my head. "Not really. They're mostly harmless unless someone's dumb enough to mess with them." He smirked. "That's what I thought. All right. Well, consider this a courtesy visit. I'll file the report, but unless the HOA wants to take this to court, and trust me, they don't, there's nothing they can do." I thanked him, and as he walked away, I saw Lisa standing at the end of my driveway, arms crossed, glaring daggers at me. She had probably been waiting, hoping to see me get dragged away in handcuffs. When the officer got in his car and drove off without incident, her face turned an even deeper shade of red. She stormed toward me. "This isn't over," she hissed through gritted teeth. I leaned against my porch railing, calm and collected. "Oh, Lisa, it really is." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "I will take you to court. I will sue you for everything you have." I chuckled. "Go ahead. You'll lose. And when you do, I'll countersue for harassment." She sputtered, her confidence finally cracking. She had built her power on intimidation, on making people believe she was untouchable. But now, standing there, humiliated, powerless, she finally realized the truth. She had lost, and there was nothing she could do to change that. A few days later, the real implosion began. The viral video had drawn more attention than just online laughter. It had also exposed years of HOA corruption. People started coming forward with their own horror stories. Homeowners who had been bullied into ridiculous fines, unfair rules, and even forced property modifications. Local news stations picked up on it, running reports exposing Lisa and the HOA's shady dealings. The board members who had once stood so confidently by her side now scrambled to distance themselves. Residents started openly questioning why they were paying into an organization that did nothing but make their lives miserable. Then came the final nail in the coffin. The HOA held an emergency meeting to discuss the ongoing public relations crisis. But instead of uniting behind Lisa, the board turned on her. The fines, the lawsuits, the trespassing, everything had become too much. People had already begun petitioning to remove her from power, and with the HOA's reputation in shambles, the board had no choice but to save themselves. In an overwhelming vote, Lisa was officially removed as president. She fought it, of course. She shouted, threatened legal action, called everyone ungrateful, but it didn't matter. Her reign was over. A few weeks later, a for sale sign appeared in front of Lisa's house. It wasn't surprising. Her reputation was ruined, her power was gone, and no one in the neighborhood wanted her there anymore. I watched from my porch as a moving truck pulled up one morning. She stood by her car, looking around at the neighborhood she had once controlled with an iron fist. Our eyes met for one final time, and for the first time, she didn't glare, she didn't scowl. She just looked defeated. Without a word, she got in her car and drove away. With Lisa gone, the HOA crumbled. The remaining members tried to hold on, but with the negative publicity and the overwhelming support to dismantle it, they had no real power left. A vote was held, and for the first time in the history of the neighborhood, the HOA was officially disbanded. Homeowners rejoiced, some through parties. Others simply enjoyed the newfound freedom of being able to do whatever they wanted with their own properties. As for me, I spent my first day under the new regime lounging by my pool, a drink in hand, enjoying the quiet. No fines, no threats, no entitled neighbors claiming my backyard as their own. Just peace. A few friends stopped by later that evening, curious to see if the piranhas were still there. I chuckled, walking up to the pool and peering into the water. The fish were still there, gliding lazily, as if completely unaware of the chaos they had caused. One of my friends laughed. So, you ever going to get rid of them? I smirked. Nah, I kind of like them. We all laughed, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, I leaned back, completely content. It had been a wild, ridiculous, completely insane journey, but in the end, I had won. My property was mine again. The HOA was gone. Lisa was out of my life for good. And best of all, no one would ever dare try to claim my pool.